Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Bill.
It's Gridiron 360. Thank you all for listening. We're going to recap on this crisp, beautiful Monday morning the happenings of Week 7 in college football. Dave, I think it happened. It happened. We were waiting. We saw some of those teams in the mid to late teens to 25 in the AP pool. That's been shaking up a good bit throughout the season. Still haven't seen one of the big dogs really take a hit that you're like, that makes one of those things that makes you go,
Yep. It's going to make you rethink how the whole thing shapes out.
Wow, we did this weekend, and we will talk about that with the big Gamecock defeat of the Bulldogs on their own turf. But yes, it was a fun weekend. That was just a little tidbit of some crazy haps, lots of big, good games. We're going to start out with a couple with a few teams that are quietly still in the mix, but had games this weekend where they needed to do their thing, kind of hung on and did do their thing, and off they go to the next week, still in the rankings. Let's start with the Arizona State Sun Devils traveling to Washington State to take on Coach Leach and his Cougs. This game was definitely competitive. I thought it was something because Arizona State went into the game ranked 17? 18. Washington State was one of those teams. Obviously, they won the Pac-12 last year. One of those teams that I thought definitely still had a chance. Took a couple lumps in the road. The most notable, that loss to UCLA, which was a travesty. But definitely a team that can compete. I thought Arizona State was a good team going into this game. I wasn't sure exactly how good. And, you know, we were busy at our game when this game was actually taking place, but I was following it on the game cast, and they were showing the score on the board. And, you know, for a good portion of the game, Washington State seemed to have control. They weren't destroying Arizona State, but from what I saw, they had the lead. Good portion of the game. It was 10-0 after the first. Then they had put another one on in the second, to which Arizona State came back and matched them, going in at half, tied to come out. And Washington State throws another 14 on the board to Arizona State 7, moving into the fourth quarter. They're up. And, at the end of the game, Arizona State pulled it out. You know, they throw up 14 points in the fourth to Washington State's 3 and end up winning the game 38-34. So good for them. The quarterback, Jaden Daniels, good day. 26 of 36 through the air, 363 yards, 3 TDs, no picks. Also ran the ball 10 times for 23 yards and a scamper for the touchdown. One of their receivers went bonkers. Number 2, Brandon Ayuk, however you say it. He had 7 receptions, 196 yards, and 3 TDs. Those were all 3 TDs that Daniels threw were to him. And they did okay on the ground as well. 19 rushes, 137 yards, and a TD from Eno Benjamin. So, they really, again, this is a team that not a lot of people get to see because it's a Pac-12 team. This was a game that was on for the world to be able to see, as it was a 3:30 game. And they got the job done. Now, on the flip side of the ball, Washington State, their quarterback, Anthony Gordon, had their aerial attack, as we expect with Washington State and Coach Leach at the helm calling the plays, was very good. Their ground attack is where it killed them. I just rattled off the numbers for Arizona State, which were, if you look between the rushing and the passing, it seemed pretty balanced. But on the Washington State side, it was all through the air. Anthony Gordon, the quarterback, was 44 of 64, had 466 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns, no picks, rushed one time for a yard, which was probably just a scramble. But the issue, again, came with the rushing. Their running back, Borghi, who had 9 rushes for 31 yards, did see the end zone, but was averaging 3.4. Obviously, only 9 carries. Add that to the 1 carry that the quarterback had, probably on a scramble. That's 10 carries to 64 passing attempts. Totally unbalanced, and I think that just from those stats alone, because we were at our game. Those stats alone, the highlights I saw and the bits I saw, that's where they suffered. They you got to be able to be balanced enough to have some semblance of a running attack to slow this thing down, especially in situations throughout this game where they had the lead. Protect your lead, be able to run the ball and help protect your lead. So final score again, 38-34, Arizona State. They jump from the 18 to 17 in the AP poll. They remain 5-1. The Cougs unfortunately go to 3-2. It looks like that could be it for them. But Arizona State definitely in the mix for the Pac-12 championship, and we've talked a lot about Oregon and them still having a shot as the representative, but Arizona State could also be one of those teams. The only difference is Oregon did play a good Auburn team at the beginning of the year, and if push comes to shove, these two teams will probably meet in the Pac-12 championship. But that's, I think, the only leg up really that Oregon has on Arizona State now, because their records are identical. And Oregon is not in the top. They're in they're 12, I think. 13. Yeah. So. What do you think? Again, we were together, so we didn't see a whole lot of this game. But any comments on the Washington State?
I think you hit on it. I think if you look, everything was pretty even. Time of possession was 31-29 to Washington State. It was a clean game from a turnover perspective. Both threw up zeros. They had 3 more sacks. Washington, it was 3 sacks to none, but then they had 7 penalties to 5. So everything was pretty balanced, with the exception of the fact that Washington was not balanced pass versus rush in this game. But even the yardage was very close. And Washington State was playing with the lead the majority of the game. They did come back and tie it at halftime, but then Washington State was leading by a touchdown going in third quarter. And, so some of those things, come into play. And it was a close battle. And just a correction on that, Washington is 3-3, because after they had the UCLA debacle, they lost again. The next week, too, it wasn't Cal, was it? But they are 3-3.
Yeah, they're 3-3.
Yeah, you said 3-2. That's
did
probably,
I?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
They lost to Utah a
yes,
week ago.
Yes, Utah.
38-13 at Utah, and then the UCLA loss.
I think they responded well to, Mike Leach, after the loss to Utah, when
he ripped them a new one.
Yeah, ripped them apart, his team, and I think they responded well. But Arizona's a good team, and again, this is kind of the hanging on as we get into kind of the rest of this slate. It's the craziness that's going to happen along the way. Arizona State and Oregon right now are probably set up to play each other in the title game. Again, that's assuming all continues according to the way it is right now, which is not a good assumption, but it does give them an opportunity coming out of the Pac-12 if some of this stuff gets real chaotic over in these other conferences.
Yeah, and these two teams will meet each other before the Pac-12 championship.
Oh, they do play this year.
Yeah,
okay,
do.
all right.
They play at the end of November. So, it's there's still football left to be played, but we had talked in the preview. This is Separation Saturday, or this was Separation Saturday, and it definitely started to pan out that way. So we'll jump into the next game. As we just spoke about Oregon, we had the Buffs of Colorado traveling up to Oregon to take on the Ducks. Again, the Ducks. They're sitting at what? They were at 13. They're
They
now
were
at
13. Or they moved up. Yeah, I'm using last week's rankings.
They're moving.
at
They
the
moved
time.
up a tick to 12. They too are 5-1.
Yep.
Buffalo's went into this game 3-2. Had really looked pretty good all season. You know,
Yeah,
I mean, Colorado. They beat Arizona State for their one loss. Okay,
Yep.
so the one loss Arizona State has is to Colorado. They took care of Nebraska at home, but they do have some the losses Colorado has is not great. Air Force beat them, and then they had a loss to Arizona, who, yes, they are definitely better. I think they're surprising a lot of folks. They're sitting at 4-1 too. I don't know if a lot of people believe in it. I think they're in a situation with Kevin Sumlin. The guy has been a head coach for way longer than I think he should be. I don't care what you say. He's one of those coordinators, not head coaches. He's doing a good job right now. He has a really good quarterback that's performing as a lot, would hope in Khalil Tate. But I don't know if it's quite smoking mirrors with Arizona. I mean, they too beat Colorado, but they had UCLA, we know is not that great. They had Texas Tech, who had a good game this weekend, but, lost, gave a tough fight to Baylor. We saw at the at the start of the year, they lost to that Hawaii team. Arizona got blown out by a Washington team. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's smoking mirrors for Arizona or not.
Well, they took the loss this week, so
yeah, they did take the loss. But anyways, we're talking Oregon, Colorado. That's kind of where I was going. So Colorado, yeah, they've been a surprisingly decent team with Mel Tucker at the helm. Didn't happen this weekend with Oregon, and we had talked about this as well with the separation Saturday. Now, as we start to get in this back half and a few weeks away from the committee meeting for the college football playoff ranking, unfortunately, it is about style points. It is about the eye test. And we said, as Colorado or Oregon should win this game in the preview. The question was, are they going to put the style points on that they need to put on to make it look good to the committee as we start to come down to it? And they did.
And they did. That's the impressive part about it, is that they, Colorado's give some teams at least a tough game, but Oregon just slapped them around. And the great part was it was a very balanced. It wasn't this wasn't Herbert just blowing up. It was the running game was very strong. Verdell was off his rocker.
Yeah, run through some numbers for us.
Well, just from starting with the quarterback, as I mentioned, Justin Herbert, he went 18 for 32, 261, 2 TDs. So nothing like really astronomical.
No picks.
No picks. But Verdell was 14 for 171. And I don't know how, but didn't get in the end zone even with a 70-yard run.
His counterpart, though, I love his name.
Yeah, Habibi Likiu.
Woo, Cyrus, the Osiris.
Yeah, he was 13 for 47. Now he's generally he got to be third fiddle, if not fourth fiddle, but he definitely got a workload. But Dye is usually I want to see, because I didn't see anything in here whether he got hurt or not, because he only ran the ball 3 times, which usually he gets a fairly good share, but he was still got 54 yards on the ground.
Yeah,
they spread the ball around offensively. This is a team they also did it with defense. Defense got 4 turnovers, 4 interceptions in this game. So that stuff is huge. They were 275 in passing and 252 in rushing, so extremely balanced, which is a little bit out of they're usually a heavier lean towards the pass, but they've been kind of figuring out the good ways to win, and this is
you have to when you get down the stretch.
Absolutely.
You can't just be one-dimensional, because somebody's going to take that away.
Yeah, this unfortunately there's a little bit of a penalty fest here, though. There was 24 total penalties on the day, so that was ugly.
That just sucks.
Yeah, but when you smoke the turnover battle and you run the ball well, again, that if you were to tell me who's Oregon, that ain't them, like, historically, but for them to be able to do that shows something,
and
I think
put that many points up.
Yeah, absolutely. So these two teams are important to talk about, because again, chaos is going to begin chaos has already started to ensue, and it's only going to get crazier because we've got a lot of these undefeated teams that still have yet to play each other. So, they can quietly hang in there and very likely have an opportunity if they can win out and show good style points to maybe even backdoor into the playoff, but certainly get close.
Yeah. I mean, that's, again, the one loss they took was to that Auburn team, beginning of the year, first game of the year.
Yep.
I don't care what you say about Auburn now. They're a good team.
And they can make a lot of noise in the West if they want to.
Still a lot of games to be played out there that, if they continue to excel on their end, if they do their part, that's just going to help Oregon down the stretch.
Yep, agreed. So now what we want to do is get into our next segment, and we won't spend as much time on these games because it's going to be kind of self-explanatory, but these are the biggest losers of the college football week, and you already started mentioning this, but South Carolina heads between the hedges, and they chopped them down.
I mean, dude,
wow.
Look, here's what I actually, wow. And I still have to send my buddy a text. Shout out to Jason Fulton across the street, my friend. He's a Gamecock. Good dude, though, as not a lot of those guys are. But he is a great dude. Yeah, man, I've been to a game when Clemson's played South Carolina and Columbia. They'll spit on you. They're not friendly. Not what you saw in Death Valley as the opponent coming in. But shout out to Jason and to his Gamecocks. We had dinner Friday night. He wasn't completely giving up, but he was very, very skeptical. And I said, hey, man, here's the deal. We Clemson faced North Carolina a few weeks ago. They by no means have the depth that we do, but they do have talented dudes on their defense that start. And they managed to find a way to be up and playing at an extremely high level the entire 4 quarters of the game. And I said that to him. I'm like, if you guys, because what Georgia does is just kind of wear you down. It doesn't seem to be flashy. They wear you down until you just break. And then they just have you, especially in the run game. And I said, if you guys can maintain to hang in this game, going into the 4th quarter, and your starters, especially on the defensive side of the ball, can continue to play at a high level, a la North Carolina against Clemson, you got a shot. Yeah, that's kind of what happened, man. I mean, they were able to stuff Georgia's running game for the most part. DeAndre Swift got his. He had 23 carries for 113 yards and a touchdown. But outside of that, I mean, it's a backfield with a lot of guys. Amir White went 12 for 44. James Cook 2 for 10. But, and 23 for $113 and a TD is great for Swift. But what we see mostly out of him is that's his average. We expect more from him. At least another TD in the books, and that didn't happen. Through the air, we've talked about it. You've made a big stink about how Georgia's aerial attack is something less than desirable. We need to see something, and it showed here. They had number one, George Pickens was 7 receptions for 98 yards. Robertson was 5 for 51 in TD. Cager, who's been their big play receiver all year, really the go-to guy, was 4 for 48. But you don't see anything jump off the page there. And with their running game in Swift having a good day, but again, something that is more of an average for him, nothing above average, and a less than spectacular day through the air. Fromm went 28. I mean, he threw the ball 51 times. Let's see. I'm looking here. 23, 12, that's 35, 41, 43 runs to 51 passes. That's not Georgia's game, okay? It's somewhat closely balanced, but no matter what, I always expected to lean more on the run side. Fromm was 28 of 51 for 295 yards, 1 TD, 3 picks. And I love Jake Fromm, and I do think he is, he's a gamer. But I have seen in years where there is at least one game during the season where he is just off. And usually it's a game where they need him, but This was a game where they really needed him, and he was all. I mean, you can't. You're not going to win even against a team like that with 3 picks.
Yeah, this was a game about it was simple. Like, I'll go down this stat line with you, and if you were to say that South Carolina is going to beat Georgia, I mean, the first thing you're going to say is they're going to have to play an incredibly clean game. But if you look at this, I go down and look at the game stats, the first 6 stats. Georgia, 36 minutes to 24 minutes in time of possession. Total yards, 468 to 297 for Georgia. Passing yards, Georgia doubled their passing yards. Rushing yards, beat them by 30 yards in rushing yards.
Mm-hmm.
Doubled their first downs. And South Carolina doubled Georgia's penalties. So right there, that says
what happened?
This is an absolute throttling. Even the plays, 101 plays to 79 plays. Yet here was the game. 4 turnovers for Georgia, 0 for South Carolina, 3 sacks for South Carolina, 0 sacks for Georgia.
I've said that too. I've said I worry about how them putting pressure on the quarterback.
Defense and pass offense.
Something's wrong with Georgia's, edge attack. Something's wrong with getting to the quarterback. And in this league, especially if you get to the championship game, you got to face like a Tua or even if it's what's his name from LSU,
Burrow.
Joe Burrow. I mean, you better be able to put more pressure and get a few sacks in there to make them think and maybe try to get rid of the ball quicker. They can't do it. That's what happened last year. I keep saying it. Last year, Georgia was last in the SEC in sack totals.
Yeah, but I'll say this. This to me is very much like the Clemson North Carolina game last week, except it didn't get the same result. Because let's be somewhat fair to Georgia in this sense. I mean, they were a missed field goal that they should have made from tying it up. But this game,
they missed 2.
Right, but I'm just saying at the end they could have tied this game. But here's the thing I'll say is I watched the Clemson North Carolina game, almost all of it, and it was a game where everything was bouncing North Carolina's way. Every big third down they got, and Clemson was just struggling, and they were not playing the game that I know that they're capable of playing, and obviously saw this weekend. And it was just, you could just see it wasn't happening. This was kind of the same thing, except the difference is, I think, is that they collapsed at a couple of crucial moments where Clemson held firm, and that's indicative. The best teams in the country, it's not about watching them win 55-3. It's when they get in that tough game, are they able to overcome their own struggles? And are they able to overcome the team that's, playing at a different energy level? And I saw Clemson do it, and Georgia could not. This is a team it's flawed, and certainly, obviously, they're beatable because they were beaten. But I mean, Georgia, just again, looking at the stats, Georgia had every reason to win this game, and just things were not going their way, and they just couldn't adjust to it at the right time. And this is crushing. It's crushing for them. Now, Florida, looking like a better team, they would have to beat Florida and then win the SEC, I think, to get in. I think just too much got shown from this game.
Well,
and again, that's a lot of ifs. Don't get me wrong. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying that's where this team stands right now. But my belief is that's such a slim possibility that I think this just absolutely took them out of the game.
Understand, Georgia does still control their own destiny. Don't get it twisted.
They
the
do.
winner of the SEC championship game
is going to the playoffs.
Will get in. They will get in. It's a given. I mean, unless they take somehow Florida takes a few losses, they take a few losses as well, and one of those two teams goes and wins the championship game with a few losses, there may be questions, but that's the way it's going to be. It's just almost a given. But, you look at this thing here, they had 3 picks isn't good, but also it's the timing of the picks. The first overtime of the game, it was 0-0 to go into the second overtime. And the reason is I believe the South Carolina kicker missed the field goal try when they got the ball. And then Georgia gets the ball, and or I think it was the other way. Georgia, I think, got it first, and Fromm throws a pick. Like, that's a critical time. Like, in overtime, you've got the ball pretty much in field goal range for the most part, especially with a guy like Blankenship. Yes, he missed two, and that's just something you don't normally see, and it cost him the game. But you're pretty much in field goal range when you start your overtime drive, and he throws a pick.
Yep.
They're lucky it didn't end right there when South Carolina got the ball.
Well, they missed a 33-yard field goal.
Dude missed a chipper, and you see the crowd like, oh my God, thank you. Just to get the next one. Just so that Blankenship can miss his field goal try on the second overtime. So again, I mean, it's not just the three picks from through. It's the timing, and that's a horrible, horrible time.
Well, that's what I meant kind of with Clemson. It's like, Clemson did not look like a great team against North Carolina, but when it was that 2-point conversion, they bowed up. There were times where North Carolina could have gotten a lead on them pretty nice, and Clemson just found a way to fight through those tougher plays. And that's the thing is, like you said, it's all timing. It's all critical. So while Georgia had all these things, it was like at those critical moments, they crumbled. And here's the whole thing is you're not going to get through the playoffs and the title game without being able to handle some of that adversity. So it's an indicator to what you're going to see when that happens. And that to me is why I would not say that, Georgia does control its own destiny. I'm not a believer in that destiny going to a playoff.
I know. So Georgia falls, takes a big tumble. They were at 3. They're now at 10. And again, they do control their own destiny, whether you're a believer or not. But they better sack it up. There's a lot. The expectations were way higher, and even for me, I got to admit, like when Kirby came in, I said, give him a couple 3 years, you guys will be in the mix, and they have been, but they're now floating in that same. They're successful, but they can't kind of like break through this ceiling.
Yeah. So somebody's got look. It's real simple. Somebody's got to slay the dragon, and we all know who the dragon is. The dragon is you got to go in undefeated and beat Alabama.
Yep.
And until you do that, it doesn't matter. Now we're looking at another team right now, and we'll talk about it later, that has got a very real possibility of being able to slay the dragon. So it's just that's really what it comes down to. But it first starts when you're in the SEC East, especially as soft as people thought it was starting the year. Again, now it's a little more interesting with this Florida team, but it's still really a 2-team race.
Yep.
So this game obviously was the biggest loss.
That was the big one we were waiting for.
Yeah,
we had been talking about it. This is it.
Yeah.
Now it's not
the
to say
unexpected one.
It's not to say that there won't be more, because it's getting critical now, and the bigger matchups are coming. This is the first big one. There's some great. We're in Atlanta. There's some great memes, which I'm not super savvy with them, but they're, what is a meme? What does meme stand for?
Meme?
Meme? Anyways, there's some great memes on it. We're going to throw one up with this podcast for the Georgia fans. Love you, but, you got to sometimes come off your high horse. You had to take a little swallow of the medicine here this weekend, my friends.
Yep.
It sucks for you that, the big dog that went down this weekend was your team, but that's what happened, bro.
And this is another big loser by proxy to Georgia is USC playing Notre Dame. We talked about it. Notre Dame, and you've said it many times, like Notre Dame's season came down to the Georgia game. Mm-hmm. Well, now with the Georgia loss, at the very least, Notre Dame had to have some huge style points in this game, and they squeaked out a win. They ran the ball really, really well in this game, but, the passing game wasn't there. Got some sacks, but it was clean for USC. Good on them to get a clean sheet there from turnovers, because that was going to be critical to stay in this game.
Yep.
Slovis had a nice game. I mean, 24-35 for 255 and 2 touchdowns. They actually ran the ball pretty well in this game too, as well, and spread it around. So that's kind of the nice thing to see about USC. There's obviously some potential turmoil brewing there with their coach. Ian Book did not have a great day, 17 of 32 for 165 and a touchdown, as I mentioned. But again, they did run the ball. I think they ran it for like 350 yards or 308 yards. Sorry. So Notre Dame was able to win it, but again, the style points hurt. USC is not really lighting it up this year, even though they've had a couple of played better certainly than I thought, and had a couple of good games. But that Georgia loss now really makes Notre Dame look worse. I think when it comes to these style points, because there's going to be one-loss teams in this playoff. It's gonna happen. So. That one, I don't know that we need to spend a ton of time on. If you have anything you want to add, I just want to just show how this all rolls down.
Like, look, we have these AP polls, and they're nice. They're nice.
They're pretty.
They really don't mean much because, I have, not that I'm in Georgia's corner on this, but how in the crapper does Georgia drop to 10 and Notre Dame's number 8? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
They're both with the same record, and head-to-head, Notre Dame lost. It's not like they played a team in USC that is honestly, if USC and USC played, it could go either way. It's not like I'm looking at the USC Trojans is way better than the USC Gamecocks. Yep. But maybe that's what the pollers thought for eking out a win, and they deserve to, look. I mean, if anything, I would have dropped them further than where they were simply because Georgia lost. USC put up 3-0 right out the gates first quarter. Notre Dame comes back, throws a 17-point second quarter on. They go in the half, winning 17-3. And then, USC comes out second half, puts 10 points on the board. Notre Dame puts 3. I mean, they're in this game. Last quarter, they put 14 to Notre Dame's 10. They fought tooth and nail all the way to the end. So, and I don't think USC's a bad team, but, you got a backup quarterback. You got, a coach fighting for his job. And it was at Notre Dame. It was, it was in their house. And this game, if you know the game, if you're a fan of either team, or if you're just a college football historian, it doesn't matter. This is like a rivalry game for a lot of teams. Records, everything can be thrown out. This is a dogfight between these two teams. So I'm okay with it, that it ended up a close game. But, again, if you're going to have a shot, now you don't because Georgia lost, but if you were going to have any shot, you got to throw up a few style points, unfortunately. You got to make it look good, and they look like they struggled.
Yeah, again, that it is. It's going to matter where I think you'll get the correction, you're talking about the AP poll, is when you see the playoff rankings come out. I think you're going to see the truth.
That's why I said the AP poll is nice.
So it's fodder.
Yeah, it's something just to kind of give you something to talk about. But we're going to jump to the next game, and that was the Miami Hurricanes traveling up to take on the Virginia Cavaliers. Virginia is sitting there with the one loss that they have. That was to whom? Who did Virginia lose to? They lost to. I can't even remember, man. I can't even pull it up out here, Bag. Where is it, man?
It was a Duke? No. Was it Duke?
No, I don't know. Anyways, Virginia.
Why am I blanking?
I have no idea.
They lost to Notre Dame.
Oh, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. So Virginia goes into this game 4-1 with a one-loss to Notre Dame. So they're still undefeated in the ACC, especially on their side of the conference, which Miami also sits at. Miami coming into the game 2-3. Virginia, if we were going to say there was a team on, that was kind of the class of the ACC Coastal, I think everybody at this point in the season said, okay, it looks like it's going to be Virginia. Not so much. Miami, to their credit, did a good job of holding Perkins in check. He went 24 of 41 for 244 yards, no TDs through the air, no picks on the ground, which he's been known to do, especially when the passing game isn't like, doing its thing. And I kind of question his passing capabilities, but he is a runner. Well, he was only 17 carries for 27 yards, no TDs. So they were able to hold him in check. Now, look, Miami's defense is what they're known for at this point in the game. And, they are a fast defense and they do have athletes. So that can spell doom for those running quarterbacks. And they were able to hold them in check.
Yeah, I will say this. I watched this game all the way through the third quarter. I turned it off in the fourth before the fourth started. But understand something. Miami scored a touchdown to begin the game, okay? Put up a bunch of yards, I believe. I think that was like a 75-yard drive, I believe. Let's see. Where did they start at? I got to look. Miami 22. So it was 78 yards, okay? So right now, let's just talk about stats. So they finished with 265 yards, and 80 of those came on the first drive. It was 7-0 Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Through the first three quarters, Virginia had 6 possessions in the red zone. 6. And came away with 9 points, scored 3 field goals. Virginia outplayed them. Now, Miami's defense showed up when it was time, but I watched this. The play calling was horrid. The whole game plan was god-awful. Perkins did not play well. And they also, unfortunately, lost one of their ultra-talented corners, Bryce Hall.
Yep.
He's done for.
Is he done for the year?
Yeah, they would not re-show the hit, but you could see it from another angle, just that he got rolled up on real bad. It was a special teams play is where he got hurt.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so but you could tell he was in, and he knew it too. It was sad because that's a first-round talent right there that went down. But this is a game where Virginia could have won it. Miami moved the ball a little bit in the second half, but this was, to me, I watched this game. This was more about Virginia looking like puke than Miami looking good. And I'm not doing that just to trash the Hurricanes, but it just wasn't. N'Kosi Perry, go look at his stats. They were not otherworldly.
And I still question that move, man. I don't know if,
Well, it's injury. According to them, they're still coming out, and they're saying Jaron Williams is the starting quarterback. So when he's healthy, he will play.
Okay.
So at least that's Diaz's
good food
take.
for thought.
So, again, this to me is just further evidence that right now I got to say it was a battle between the Pac-12 and the ACC. The only reason I would give the ACC a leg up for the not being the worst conference in football right now is because we got Clemson. But I will tell you, if I take everybody but the best team, and right now the Pac-12, I'd probably take Oregon, though Arizona State's got, there's still some play there. If I was to take it away, I would say the ACC is the worst team right now. Worst conference. I don't know. Like I continue to watch games like this where teams have an opportunity to take advantage, and like I said, with the exception of Clemson, they don't do it. And we're going to talk about another game here in a second. So this game really was not pretty. It wasn't pretty on either side, even though there weren't a lot of turnovers. It wasn't well played. Miami's defense was probably the best part of the game for any one of the 4 sides between Virginia's offense and defense and Miami's offense and defense. Miami's defense was the best, but think about this. They win this game if they kick 6 field goals.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I needed to know. And that doesn't even include anything that happened in the fourth quarter because it was only 10-9 at that point. Miami scored a touchdown late. So anyway, I just wanted to give that take. I was very, very disappointed in the way this one was played, because I would love to say, oh, Miami just, kind of gave him a game, but it really wasn't. I wish it was, but it wasn't. So kind of talking about another team that decided to poop the bed.
Mm-hmm.
Another undefeated down. Wake Forest was at home against Louisville. And I will say this. You've mentioned it a few times. I like this Louisville coach.
Yeah.
He's
a good dude, man.
And they got out quick. They got up 21-7 in the first quarter. I will give Wake some credit. They got into this shootout and really got things going. Really at the end of the third quarter, you were 45 to 21, 31, 45 to 31.
Yeah, there were a ton of points in this game.
So this game, goes down and Wake really made a push offensively. They scored 4 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. So, I remember kind of just thumbing through this game, and I'm like, oh, and it was in like the 30s, and then all of a sudden, your end score is 62-59. But again, Wake undefeated at home, and that's not how good conferences need to be playing. And that's the thing that bothers me. Not so much that Wake lost this. There's a lot of things to like about Louisville, especially with where they're headed, but losing like this is just not a good look for the conference. So that's my thought on that.
Yeah, I mean, look, you gotta own it. You gotta own it. If you have the 4-1 record or the 1-loss record, or you're at this point in the season, you're looking good. You're looking at the outlook for the rest of the season. You're like, okay, we got a shot to make some waves. Now Wake is on our side, so it's not like they're and they have a shot to play. They're playing us, and they have a shot. It's at Wake. Don't put it past. We got to come to play.
Yep.
But you got to own it, and when so that you play a team like this and you show them that you're worthy of where you're at with your record and that you're not just some fluke, and they didn't. Now, the Newman kid, I mean, I caught mostly the end of this because we were driving home and you were keeping me updated on stats. The Newman kid, I believe, went out with a shoulder injury.
Yep.
Because I saw him on the sideline when I got home and caught the end of the game with the ice on his shoulder. And our man from QB1 under the lights, Sam Hartman.
Yep.
Healthy again, gets back in the game. He actually played really well.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he was fighting all the way to the end. He was through some good balls, and they weren't all to Sage Surratt. Okay, so in fact, the leading receiver on the team this week it was Surratt.
Well, in yards, but not in catches.
But in catches, it was
Kendall Hinton.
It was Hinton, who was 13 for 134. Surratt, 12 for 196. Surratt did have 3 TDs. I mean, that kid is, wow.
Yep.
We're going to have to lock him down when we go to Wake in a few weeks.
Yeah, well, the other thing that really pisses me off about this will be the second week in a row we get a pissed off team on the road because Florida State goes to Wake.
Yeah.
And they may be taking it out on us because they are certainly the better team, man for man right now in the way they're playing. But again, this is where I would like to see, our teams that have opportunities, UVA, Wake Forest. The ACC has desperately needed teams besides Florida State, which obviously is doing nobody any favors right now, and Clemson to step up and make this conference what it is. Wake's had a chance this year. UVA's had a chance. It's just time for something to happen. So that's what really disappoints me about this.
I know that at the beginning of the season, the quarterback for Louisville was Juwan Puma Pass.
He's hurt.
He is hurt. Okay. Yep. This freshman kid, just as Wake had to bring Hartman in, Louisville had to bring in a freshman quarterback, and that was that Evan Conley kid, 12 for 18, 196 yards, 2 TDs and a pick. Didn't look bad. Rushed the ball 7 times for 79 yards and a TD, and I got to be honest, that little white kid can scoop, bro. I mean, like, I saw him at the end, get loose, in the middle of the field, didn't see anyone, and took off. Now, granted, he might have pulled down and taken off quicker than, letting some of those reads develop. But when he got going, he was scooting, man.
Yep.
I was like, wow, that guy's fast.
Yep.
So, I mean, maybe another dimension that helps them as they move forward, certainly with pass out of the game.
Yeah, well, even Cunningham is every one of their quarterbacks has that ability to run pass. Now, are they all the prettiest passers in the world? No. Conley maybe has a shot, as a young kid, but they can keep you off balance in that offense. That is for sure with any one of those guys, which is pretty impressive. I just I like what they did. I give them all the credit in the world. And with the fact that they scored, they got into a shootout with Wake, and Wake hung in there. So while I don't think deep down this is as horrible a loss as it feels, this is just more like conference-wise. This is just a kick in the teeth. And obviously Wake being undefeated, that would have made your game against them a hell of a lot more interesting.
Sure. So now, I am glad that Louisville got the win for the mere fact is they're now feeling good about themselves, riding high, cloud 9, get to go home to have their next game. They don't have to go on the road.
And they get you.
We're coming. We're coming.
We'll get to that.
Yes, we will. So that kind of hits the.
Well, there's one other.
Oh, yeah.
One other
Hit
team that lost
one.
was Memphis going to Temple. I guess I'll say this. If you remember, there was a Maryland team that was absolutely blowing the doors off of teams, and I think they had set a record for scoring like 178 points and not giving up a point in their first 2 games, and then went and played Temple, and Temple stuffed them on 4 straight downs and ended up winning the game. Memphis is a team that's known to have a lot of team speed. They got it again this year. And they're tough. They are a tough team. They generally give the Power Fives a rough time, especially ask those guys in Mississippi in the SEC. They don't like playing them either. But Temple gets it done again and comes out and beats Memphis. So in this week, we have 1, 2, 3 teams not playing ranked opponents that go down of the 16 that were ranked. And then now we're going to move on and talk about the big matchups and the implications. About 8 games to look at. So we'll get into that right now. All right. So now we're talking about some of the heavyweight matchups and the undefeateds that got some stuff done and are still in the picture. So we'll start off with one you mentioned earlier, talking about Baylor taking on Texas Tech. Now, Baylor's been that one of those quiet teams, just win and win and win and win. Not winning like the old school Art Briles days, in the same type of offense, same type of style. They go and play a Texas Tech team that, again, maybe not quite the Red Raiders of, the Clifford Kingsbury, but they've been putting up some numbers, and this was a battle, an absolute battle, and it went into double overtime, in fact, and Baylor comes away with the win. It's still ranked 22, but going into the game, and they've moved up and took care of business. Was kind of interesting because their quarterback for Baylor had a rough go in this game. Casey Phillips had no touchdowns and 3 interceptions.
Whoa. Charlie Brewer is the quarterback for Baylor.
What did I say?
Casey Phillips. I don't know who that is.
Oh, sorry.
That sounds like an R&B band.
Well, you know what? You're right.
You're
I will
you're
tell you
on
this.
point with the statistics.
There's a certain website when you click his name, it comes up with a Casey Phillips profile. Not really sure why. So there's a little link broken here.
The statisticals are correct.
Yeah,
he was efficient and he had yards, but that was it.
3 picks in this game.
No touchdowns. 24, 37, 352 yards.
Yep. So, you had that, which is, obviously not a recipe for winning a game. While on the other hand, you had the quarterback too for Texas Tech did not also have a good game from an interception standpoint. Duffy went 31 of 42 for 362, 1 touchdown, so he did get a score, but had 2 picks himself. So some issues in this game, and really it kind of came down to who could figure out how to pull this one off. Brewer did do well on the ground, though.
Okay.
So he was 15 of 55 with 3 scores on the ground, so they got it done there. And Lovett also had a good game at 17 for 77. No scores, but was good there. So I don't know. Did you get a chance to? I saw a little bit of the replays, but I don't know how much you got to see of this game. But again, it just comes down to winning tough games, having a scratch and claw here and there, and Baylor is still in the fight.
Yeah, I mean, they moved up to 18. They're 6-0. Texas Tech drops to 3-3. I've seen, again, you mentioned it, not the Texas Tech that we're used to seeing under Kingsbury, where they throw up boatloads of points. They've had multiple games this year where they've not scored a lot at all. I mean, you look at from the beginning of the year. Yeah. So, I mean, they put up 35 last week 45 against Oklahoma State in a win. Prior to that, 16 against Oklahoma, 14 against Arizona. They did put up 38 against UTEP and 45 against Montana State. But again, we're used to seeing the 45 and the 38 that they put up against those scrubby teams, against all their teams. That's just the type of game that we're used to seeing out of Texas Tech. But Kingsbury's gone. I think they're trying to keep that kind of aura about themselves, but they're running into some problems with some of these other teams and not being able to throw up 40 plus a game. Look, I've spoken very highly on Baylor. They moved up to 18. They're undefeated, and you're right. They're flying under the radar. Surprised me a little bit, though. I haven't seen Baylor boat race teams like the Briles age, but Matt Rule's doing a great job, and they've won games very cleanly for the most part, I guess you could say. And this one was a little bit of a struggle. So we'll have to see. Baylor gets to they get a team in Oklahoma State that can challenge you next week, and it's at Oklahoma State. And then they're home for West Virginia. Then they go to TCU, and then they're home for Oklahoma. So my hope is they continue undefeated on this track till they meet Oklahoma on the 16th of November. But, it surprised me. But you're right. They found a way to win. And at the end of the day, that's what you got to do. When you get caught in a game like this where, you're having a little bit of a dogfight that you may not have necessarily expected, and find a way to pull it out. Whether it's 1 overtime, 2 overtime, 10 overtime, it doesn't matter. They found a way to pull it out, 33-30, and they sit with the goose egg in their loss column. So at the end of the day, like I had said in the preview, I think this is a very good team. I think they could cause a lot of problems for your Oklahomas, or they'll get Texas too. And I think that Matt Rule's a good coach, man. Yep. I mean, he came in there with all the sanctions and the trouble that went down after the whole Briles thing, fell out. And, a lot of issues going on at Baylor, and he just kind of stayed steady, held his course, and, they're starting to come out of the darkness from that Briles and make a new name for themselves. And maybe that's why I'm hopeful for them. I'd like to see them kind of reinvent themselves and put that past behind them. Not that I'm a huge Baylor fan, but, I would, we saw the Oklahoma-Texas game, and it was close for a while. The most of the game, it was kind of close from the score. But if you watched it, Oklahoma really had control the whole game, even when it got close. That was just Texas trying to catch up, and they might have gotten within a few points, but then Oklahoma came right back and answered. Yep. So, and we'll talk more about that game. Yep. But I do tip my hat to Baylor for getting it done. They need to, do a little better with, their quarterback, Brewer. He can't go being a completely ground attack quarterback. He's got to be able to throw the ball, and he can, but it can't be a 0 in the touchdown column and a 3 in the interception column. That won't win them any games.
A big part of this, though, too, in this game is, and this is where Baylor definitely is not their MO of the past, is, they had 10 tackles for loss and 5 sacks. So a lot of negative plays. Then you throw in 2 turnovers. That's really good. Where you had Texas Tech, who had 5 tackles for loss and 2 sacks. So those are the big plays that sway games and really help you. I won't say you want to overcome 3 turnovers, because you definitely don't want to be doing that. But there was some things in this game that really are interesting for them to hang their hat on as they go forward.
Yep. So let's move on to the next big matchup of the weekend, and that was Wisconsin taking on Michigan State. Michigan State coming off that loss to Michigan last week on the road. They were in the Big House, and it was a close game. What was it, like 10-3, 10-7, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And, so it was a chance for Michigan State maybe to pick themselves back up. They're at home. Put a little bit of fight in Wisconsin. What we've seen out of Wisconsin is obviously a great team, but very one-dimensional. We've seen going in this game. We talked a lot about their quarterback, Jack Cohn. If Jonathan Taylor, who is really doing everything for him, is shut down, if they focus on shutting it down and get the job done, can Cohn step up and bring this team to victory. Now, a little bit of an off day for Jonathan Taylor, 26 carries for 80 yards. Nothing to, frown on. He did score 2 times on the ground, but Taylor has been blowing it up.
Yep.
I mean, 100 yards, no. I would say he's putting up a minimum of $150 a game, okay,
Yep.
at the minimum, and minimum of 2 scores. So this was, if anything, below average for what you see for him. And so I give a little credit to Michigan State for slowing that down, because they were, crazy on the ground with Jonathan Taylor. Now, they did, I'm looking down the rushing stats, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys that include Jonathan Taylor. So 6 outside of Taylor. That's not including Cone carrying the ball a couple times for -15. So those were sacks, scrambling, what have you. So, but outside of that, including Jonathan Taylor, there are 7 guys that carried the ball. So not as many as Taylor by any means, but there was a lot of people, receivers, there was a lot of people getting their hands on the ball on the ground rather than through the air. Cone went 18 of 21, so efficient, but didn't throw the ball that much. Obviously, way more of a running attack still, and only had 180 yards for the year, 1 TD, no interceptions. Again, it's not spectacular. So how this game ended up 38-0 is a little perplexing to me, because they did slow Taylor down. He scored when it counted, which was in close, but Cone didn't go crazy, yet the score was still 38-0.
Yep.
So, I Michigan State, great coach. D'Antonio's a good coach. Lewerke has been there a while. You figured you'd see more. The dude only threw 16 passes, 7 of 16, 53 yards, no TDs and a pick. That's not going to get it done. Their leading rusher had 8 carries for 16 yards. One guy had a 20-yard scamper, which was one of their receivers, I believe.
Yep.
Tyreek Thompson. But just did not do anything. I mean, you're just, looking over these statistics, it's poop, man. I mean, they're not even at 150 yards total offense as far as I can see, or just around there.
Well, I think part of it, you run, all football is based off, it starts with the running game and the running defense. That's how you beat teams, consistently. And here you have, they ran for 222 yards, Wisconsin did, to 30 yards to Michigan State. And here's the real kicker. Where this game was at, it's time of possession. 40 minutes to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, that will do it. Michigan also turned the ball over, or Michigan State, turned the ball over a couple of times. And Wisconsin, again, clean game. 1 penalty, no turnovers, and gave up 1 sack. I mean, that's how you do it. People say, they're one-dimensional, they're this running team. I got to tell you, I want no parts of this team if I'm anyone in the country right now, much less the guys in the Big Ten. This team just does it. Everybody, they may not be flashy. It's, you don't have this Heisman, quarterback, and you don't have these big time receivers. You just smash people in the mouth, and they can do it. Their offensive line and their defense is unbelievable. And then you throw in a guy like Jonathan Taylor, who is a legitimate Heisman candidate. I mean, I don't know. This team is just, again, Ohio State gets all the press. The SEC West gets the press. Oklahoma gets the press. But this team is right there with them.
Yeah, well, it's going to start to come to fruition, man. I mean, they get an Illinois team in Illinois, Wisconsin does, next week, and Illinois had getting better. They're getting better. They're not as much the doormat as you think. They were losing badly to Michigan and then made a triumphant comeback, all for naught. but they're a better team. But after that, then Wisconsin has to go to the Horseshoe to take on Ohio State, and then they get Iowa at home. So it's there's a couple games coming that we'll see more. But I agree that's a tough team, and unfortunately for Michigan State, yes, they sit at 4-3, so they're on the plus side of 500. But I just don't think that it's a good team. I don't think it's the Michigan State team that we're used to seeing. If you look at the games that they have won this year, I mean, they beat Indiana. They beat Northwestern, who is not the same Northwestern team that we've seen. They beat Tulsa, and they beat Western Michigan. When they've played teams of note like Arizona State, they lost. Ohio State, they lost. Wisconsin, they lost. The Arizona State game was closer. They lost 10-7, but Ohio State 34-10. This past week, Wisconsin 38-0. I just don't think Michigan State's that good. I think they're getting more credit for historical of who they are, maybe upsetting a big team. They do have a good coach. It's the same guy. Their mantra is kind of like, slow and go, ground and pound, good defense. And it's, and they have a quarterback that's been there, it seems like forever, but he's just not a great quarterback, So I just don't think Michigan State's that good. I do think Wisconsin's very good, but, the 38-0, I mean, we're going to see, man. We're going to see because, they've got it all in front of them still. So let's see. Let's jump to the next game, and we'll stay in the Big Ten, well, with a little mix of the Big 12 flavor in there as
Not anymore, buddy.
Are they in the Big Ten too? Are they?
Yeah.
Nebraska?
They used to be in the Big 12.
Right.
Now they're in the Big Ten.
All right. Minnesota, whatever you wrote there. It looks like Meme Sede.
Ah, right. Don't mess
It's
with
the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Folks, the Minnesota Golden Gophers, undefeated. Undefeated. PJ Fleck rowing the boat, man. He is rowing the boat. I like that guy. I like him.
Yep.
College football is all about coaching. I like PJ Fleck. And so this week, Minnesota goes on to take another Big Ten West team in the Nebraska Cornhuskers. A lot of hope for Nebraska starting the season. I wasn't buying, and rightfully so, because they're not very good. I like Scott Frost. I think he's a good guy. He's a fiery young guy. Maybe he got into a head coaching gig, maybe or at least at a big school like Nebraska. I know it's his alma mater. Maybe it was a year or two too early. They're just not very good. I don't think Nebraska is. Yeah, they too sit on the plus side of 500 with their record at 4-3 after this weekend's loss. But again, they took care of a Northwestern team that has got serious problems. They took care of Illinois. They took care of Northern Illinois. They lost to Colorado.
Yep.
They took care of Southern Alabama. They lost to Ohio State bad, and now they lost to Minnesota. So it's very similar to what I was just saying about Michigan State. They took care of some not so great or borderline bad teams, but when they've had to go up against an opponent, not even that's, ranked highly, but just ranked, Colorado, I think when they faced them might have been ranked because it was early in the year, if they were, but they took care of them in overtime. Ohio State beat the crap out of them. Now Minnesota at 20 ranking beats the crap out of them 34-7.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look, let's start with Nebraska in a way. You're already kind of talking about, is there a little bit to their record that's, not very impressive? Absolutely. Here's the thing: is Nebraska in their heydays, and I'm, take them back in the 90s.
Scott Frost was the quarterback there.
Yeah, take them back to the 90s. Obviously we know what this Lawrence Phillips, guys and Tommy Frazier and guys like that, and then you move on, and they've had some better teams.
Eric Crouch.
Eric Crouch and Frost. This is a team that's predicated off of You remember the black shirts?
Yeah.
You know, playing on the D line and stopping the run and being able to pound the ball down your throat.
And Ndamukong Suh is not there any longer.
Yeah, I mean, I remember. I mean, the Tommy Frazier, what he did to Florida was one of the most abused. I mean, that should have been a crime. What he did to them when he ran for like 315 yards on them. And here's the thing: is now you've got teams like Minnesota. Minnesota put 322 yards on the ground against this Nebraska team. I mean, you're talking about guys that come in and average 7.7 yards a carry, 7.6, and 5.6. The only guy who didn't average 5 yards a carry was a quarterback because he ran at one time for 4 yards. And, you know, Ibrahim had 3 touchdowns on the ground. Smith had 139 yards. This is just they pounded the ball. I mean, when you only throw 13 times in a game, he was still effective. Eight completions on 13 attempts for 128 yards and a touchdown. But when you can just demoralize a team on the ground, and then you go back and look, and we're talking about Nebraska of old with the running game. Their 2 leading rushers from attempt standpoint averaged under 3.5 yards a carry. They only had one person on 4 carries for 29 yards. That was Belt. On 4 carries, 29 yards, 7.3 average. You are not going to get it done. Again, running the ball matters. They got it jammed down their throat defensively, and they couldn't get anything going offensively. And I know they're without Martinez playing, but Martinez has sucked this year. There's no way around it. This is a bad, bad football team. This is a team void of talent. And, you know, you can say what you want about Frost and maybe being a little bit too early, but the simple fact is he has to go back in and recruit. But I don't know that Lincoln, Nebraska has the show to bring people in there. And, I mean, especially when you've got teams like Wisconsin and Michigan. I mean, again, we're not playing the Big 12 anymore. So we're playing in the Big 10. And so I think this is going to be a long, long problem. I don't know what the solution is. I've done a breakdown of all the coaches that came in 2008, and this is another one that's struggling mightily. You know, and you know, Adam with Taggart and Chip Kelly and all these guys, and it just is not a good look. This is a bad, bad football team. So cheers to Minnesota for doing what they're supposed to do, but they're a bad team.
You know what's interesting about Minnesota to me is yes, they got it done on the ground with tons of running in this game. A week before that, they played Illinois, I believe, and it was the same thing, man. The Rodney Smith kid had 24 carries for 211 on the ground. Their other running back had 16 carries for 111 on the ground. But before that, they played Purdue, and Rodney Smith had 22 carries for 115 on the ground, but Morgan had 21 for 22 for 396 and 4 TDs through the air. Before that, they played Georgia Southern, not that great, but again, did more of it through the air. 19 to 31 for 289, 3 TDs for Tanner Morgan. Before that, they played Fresno State. It's kind of balanced. They had 88. Smith had 22 for 61 on the ground. Ibrahim had 17 for 88. Morgan was 16 to 23 through the air for 234 and 2 TDs. First game of the year against South Dakota, same thing. 13 of 18 through the air, 76 through the air, 1 TD, 1 pick. Smith went 21 for 92 on the ground. Ibrahim went 12 for 36 on the ground. So they have a kind of a two-headed monster at running back. But I guess my point of all this is, for the most part, they've been balanced, but then when one thing seems to have been taken away or not working and they've gone to the other, they've been successful. So they're not a one-angled offensive team. Mm-hmm. They can get it done multiple ways. They've got, surprisingly, they've got it all in front of them. Now it's going to be, this week they get to go to Rutgers, which will be nice. And then they get they get Maryland coming to their house. Minnesota does. And then they get into the thick of things as they have Penn State and Iowa in back-to-back weeks. So, we'll see. I mean, it's, again, this PJ Fleck, good coach, rowing the boat for the Gophers. And, You know, things are looking on the up and up for Minnesota. It's a team you want to talk about flying under the radar, quiet. I mean, I don't think we've heard of people. I don't know if we've talked about Minnesota at all this year.
No.
So we've given them some time here. Good for them. I hope to keep talking about them. I like it, dude. And I'm going to be, it might just be Rutgers, but I'm going to watch some of that game this coming weekend at 3:30
Just to see what they
I
look
want,
like. I want to know them.
I want to know
about
more.
them.
I haven't watched a ton of them. They haven't really been televised. So good for them. Nice for them to pick up the win. It makes it very interesting in a Big Ten with some heavy hitting players. I mean, all around the Big Ten is, I got to tell you, they are battling the SEC right now. For
I tell you,
supremacy.
they're strongest top to bottom right now. You'd struggle to say that they're not.
That's why I'm saying. I mean, the only reason that I would say the SEC is hanging in there is because the top half is very strong.
Very, very good.
Yep. So, all right, what we got next, bro?
Why don't we talk a little bit about? We'll go to the SEC and talk a little bit of Alabama and Texas A&M. Why don't you talk about Alabama for us?
Okay. They're good, man. It's that's all you got to know. It's Alabama. I don't care about the woes that they may have, which we've exploited a lot on this. Their run defense isn't the same. Their running game isn't the same, and it's not. And I think Texas A&M was way overrated going into this year. We took out their starting running back in the game they played us at Clemson. So now it's really kind of been mostly on Kellen Mond's shoulders. He's definitely not having the year that people expected. I mean, just naturally you expect these guys to grow just from experience. But, you're with a guy, you've gone over it ad nauseum about how Jimbo Fisher is a quarterback guru guy for a coach. So not only do you expect someone like Mon to just progress naturally from his experiences, but with a guy like Jimbo right behind him, helping him there, it's not happening. And, Najee Harris did get off on the ground in this game. He had 20 carries for 114 yards, no TDs. I think the biggest number in that is 20 carries. They gave him 20 carries in the game, which we haven't seen a lot because of Tua being able to go bonkers. Tua had another great game, 21 of 34, only 293 through the air, but 4 TDs through the air. Did throw a pick, did try to run one for a 10-yard loss. It was probably a scrambly, which does tell me something. Because when Tua gets under duress, the decision-making isn't – people might think it's great when he's on the run. It's not always great, okay? It's not always great. I don't care if if efficiency-wise or the numbers show different when he's under duress. It's what I think of is if he's under duress in a critical point in the game, can you count on it? And I'm not sure that you can. Alabama wins this game 47-28. Don't get it twisted. They had this game in hand the entire time. If you want to play a little 6 degrees of separation, so they beat them by 19 points. We only beat them by 14. Clemson, that is. So look at that how you will. But again, we took out their starting running back in the game that we played them, so they didn't have Texas A&M didn't have that to trot out. And they put up some points, but it was mostly in just trying to catch up. I'm looking at the breakdown per quarter in terms of scores. Alabama to A&M respectively. It was first quarter 14-7 Bama, second quarter 10-6 Bama, third quarter 10-7 Bama, fourth quarter 13-8 Bama. They had the game in hand the whole time. They did have to also go to College Station, which isn't an easy place to play. Alabama goes into this game 5-0, ranked number 1. They come out of this game 6-0, ranked number 1. They're doing what they got to do, man. Very poor game for Kellen Mond in the sense that if he's everything they got, 24 for 42, 264 yards, no picks, 2 TDs. Also ran the ball 16 times, 90 yards in a TD. But, again, he's all they got. He's all they got. And those numbers aren't going to get it done against Bama unless your defense is so good that you can slow it down. And, if you don't have that defense to slow it down, then it's up to the offense to get the engine rolling in the boat race. And they just couldn't get it done, man. They couldn't get it done. Their leading running back was Isaiah Spiller, 10 carries for 27 yards. So a credit to the Alabama defense, run D, to be able to step up in this game, because don't get it twisted on that 16 for 90 on Kellen Mond. A lot of those were probably broken plays, scrambles, not necessarily 16 carries that were all 16 drawn up runs for Mond.
Yeah. I mean, I got to tell you, Alabama is Alabama. They're good. I think we're going to be talking about this. They belong where they're at now. The A&M thing is going to be interesting, and I don't want to play sour grapes over Jimbo Fisher leaving Florida State. I do believe he's good at maximizing the abilities of his quarterbacks. Though I will say, this is something that's always been out there because, obviously his success was under Winston, who was an elite level talent in college, good enough, obviously, to be number one in the draft. But he's now got a team that's 3-3. He's got a lot of money going in there, and the real challenge, I think, for me is, I'm not shocked by A&M having a record like this with the schedule that they've got to play. I mean, understand, they've lost to Bama, they've lost to Clemson, and they lost to Auburn, right? Was it Auburn? So, I mean, we're not talking about losing to chumps, but an inability to get signature wins where this will play a role is going to be in recruiting, and he's recruiting regionally against Texas and Oklahoma. He's recruiting in a conference-wise against Alabama, Auburn.
Arkansas even.
Yeah, so this is going –
because he's recruiting nationally against, we're going to dip in there. Clemson will dip in there.
Yeah, he's got it in the next 2 years. I think the place will be going crazy because this contract's guaranteed is if – he doesn't have them in November legitimately having a shot at the SEC West in the next couple of years. There's going to be they paid a lot of money for this, and they weren't paying to be competitive. They're paying to win a conference that's going to be very, very tough over those 2 years. And so again, I'm not saying it will bury him. There was good recruiting. I'm a little bit concerned on their on the defensive side. I mean, this is a team last year in 2000. I'm trying to look it up right now is where they stand right now. But in 2018, they were 107th against the pass. Like, they've got to be able to play very good defensive football. We can talk all we want about quarterback whispering and all that jazz. But if they don't get that figured out defensively, that's going to be the Achilles heel. Because honestly, that's where Florida State kind of started to take a dive under him. And he has a long-standing tradition of, holding on to his, to his assistants, in the fans' eyes at least, past their welcome. So I'm curious to see how that kind of plays out as the season goes on.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, they played Arkansas in Little Rock a week or two ago. They won the game 31-27, but Arkansas, going into the fourth quarter, was winning that game 24-21. And I mean, Arkansas, I love Coach Morris, but they're not there yet. I still think they're a bad team. Now, yes, the next couple of years are going to be critical for Fisher. Tua Tagovailoa will be gone from Alabama. Joe Burrow will be gone from LSU.
Yep.
Kellen Mond will be gone from Texas A&M.
That's probably a good thing.
That might be a good thing. You just took the words right out of my mouth. Here's the other thing. Next 4 weeks, A&M goes to Ole Miss. They're at home against Miss State. They're at home against UT San Antonio. And they're home against South Carolina before they have to go to Georgia and go to LSU. So they have 4 weeks here
to win.
To get some 4 wins that they should get, that they will be favored in, and tune up and maybe be able to do some things towards the end of the year. But it's not great It's not great. They've dropped from the rankings. I think their ranking preseason and these past 5-6 weeks have been very overrated. I don't know if look, man, it's the SEC. I get it. There is all around. I think that's one of my issues with these AP. They had all those SEC teams at the top starting the year with the AP poll, and not a lot of them have fell far with no matter what's happened. And we're giving a lot of and rightfully so. The SEC has some great teams, but I'm a Clemson fan, and yes, the conference sucks, but I'm trying to take a step back and look at, if we played these guys, no matter where, neutral field, their house, our house. I mean, I know Florida looks good. Yes, they finally took their loss, and we'll talk about it. Auburn, Georgia, and we'll get South Carolina, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think they could do it against us. I don't think any of those teams could do it against us. They may have put up a little bit of fight, but I don't think they could. Now, LSU and Alabama, those are teams that I'm like, yeah, those are teams that are going to cause us problems. But the rest of them, I'm not that impressed. You said it before. I would be more concerned about playing a Wisconsin, an Ohio State, obviously, even a Penn State, even maybe an Iowa. Yes, yep. Especially if you had to go there, than a Auburn team or a Florida team. That's just kind of the way I feel. Anyways, I think that Alabama's they're in a great spot. There's a lot of teams in the SEC, especially in the West, LSU, that they can get it done against Alabama. But I'm not gonna crown anyone else the leaders of the SEC other than Alabama until I see it. I'm just not. And it's Alabama, and to me, they're the class of the conference.
Okay, fair enough. Why don't we move on? Why don't we talk a little bit about you kind of just mentioned two of the teams, Penn State going to Kinnick Stadium and playing Iowa.
Yep, a lot.
Iowa coming off a loss.
Yeah, Iowa coming off a loss. A lot. We've talked a lot about how it's tough to play. In certain places, that home field advantage does mean a lot in college football. And one of the spots that it means a tremendous amount is in Iowa City at Kinnick Stadium. And thus far, Penn State has been just rolling, folks. Absolutely rolling, folks. And they go into Kinnick. Iowa, like you said, coming off a loss to Michigan in the Big House, but it was a tough fought game. They went into that game undefeated, and Michigan with their one loss, and Iowa loses the game 10-3. They get to come home and try to make it right. And unfortunately, they take a loss to the Nittany Lions, but it wasn't without a fight. The game starts out. Iowa is up 3-0 in the first quarter. They go into halftime. They're down only 7-6 to Penn State. Third quarter, it's 10-6 Penn State. Going into the fourth, it's that score. So they were within striking distance. The quarterback for Iowa, who looked absolutely horrible against Michigan, even though it was close, Nate Stanley, did a modest job in this game. 25 for 43, 286 yards to the air, 1 TD, 1 pick. That hurts. Now, the ground game was not really doing much. And, we listened to a lot of this game, and Penn State's defense, they are a bend but don't break type defense. We've talked about them being very fast, and they are. It shows. I mean, the lead rushing guy for Iowa was 8 carries for 35 yards. The next guy had 22 yards on 7 carries. So, that dictates to me a lot of what we said in terms of a fast defense. They were all over the ball and were able to really stifle the Iowa run game, leaving Nate Stanley to win the game. And again, he had a modest game, but that's not going to get it done. if you're going to have that rush game taken away, you better step up against a good team like Penn State and really show some moxie and make some plays that you probably haven't made this year, but getting it done. Now, for Penn State, Clifford, the quarterback, 12 for 24, 117 yards, 1 TD, no picks. That's okay. But they ran the ball very well. Noah Cain was 22 for 102 yards and a TD. Their next leading rusher was actually the quarterback, Sharon Clifford, 16 carries for 52 yards. I guess my takeaway in this game is just like our game against North Carolina. I hate to harken back to that, but you run into some tough games, and Iowa probably a tougher team than a North Carolina is to us, and Penn State managed to pull out the win. James Franklin's a good coach. I think he has his guys ready. I give credit to Iowa's defense. Again, we did listen to a bit of this game on our ride up to Clemson for the game, and every time
back. It was a night game.
Oh, night game. Sorry, on the ride back, and there was a lot of times I turned it on. Penn State had the ball, and Iowa was getting stops. I mean, they've got some players on their defense. That Epineza kid, who really didn't do a ton, but he's a good player. They've got, what was the other guy's name? Golston. He was all over the place. His name was called every time something happened on the radio. It seemed like his name was called. They have got a really good defense. I like that Epineza kid. Hope New York can get him as an edge rusher. But yeah, I mean, look, it's about getting it done when you need to, and Penn State did. And we have a team in Penn State that has been running scores up on people throughout the whole year outside of the Pitt game, and Iowa's defense was able to keep it close. Now you got Penn State going home. They get Michigan coming to town. Then they go to Michigan State, then they get Minnesota on the road, little Indiana, and then Ohio State matchup right before the end of the year. So the tough part of Penn State's schedule really, I think, started with this weekend. I think Iowa's a good team, and I've said it multiple times. Kinnick's a very hard place to play, let alone win. The crowd is right on top of you.
Yep.
But they really, the tough part of their schedule's ahead of them. But I give them credit. They're sitting at 6-0. They've done it the way they need to. They're, it seems like for the most part, in terms of health, the whole team, all the, important players on Penn State's team are healthy. Mm-hmm. And, they're going to get it going. I actually think this weekend with they're sitting at 7, Michigan sitting at 16. It's a 7:30 game this weekend at College. What is College?
Beaver Stadium.
Yeah, what is that? It's not College Station. It's what do you call it? It's College. It'll come to me.
State College.
State College. That's what I was thinking of. Thank you.
You got me confused when you started saying College Station. I didn't think.
I think this is weekend against Michigan is going to show these two teams' true colors. Yeah. I'm not going to get into previewing the game or making, specific predictions, but right out the gate, I think Penn State's going to beat the crap out of them. I think they're going to beat them bad. And I mean, it could be ugly. I know Michigan beat Iowa, a couple weeks ago, but it was in Michigan. They barely slipped by. I have no faith in what Michigan brings to the table. I'll take them any day and twice on Sunday as a Clemson Tiger. Any input you have?
No, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, listen, Penn State ran the ball well and stopped the run. I thought Iowa played a much better game. I got to watch some of it on the PlayStation View on the way back. That is a very tough place to play. You leave with a win, and that's a good thing, no matter who you are. When Iowa's a ranked team and they're playing at home, they have tripped up many a Big Ten team that was very strong in the last several years. So I think you walk away and you go, okay, we got it done. We're still undefeated. and we got Michigan next. So I like it. I like their running game. I like the fact that they can spread it around. Clifford did not have his best game, which is an indication of positive things for them for the future, as long as he can, round back into form. I think it's good. It's a good show.
Yep.
So we got 3 left. Where you want to head? I'll give you dealer's choice.
Let's go to the Red River rivalry.
Oh, and we're nailing it
Bam!
this
Hit
week.
the post.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Woo. All right, so
You start us off. We listened to this game. This was a new game. We did listen to this on the way.
On the way, and for those of us that weren't driving, which my partner in crime here was, he didn't get to watch as much. We watched some of it too, as well, as we were coming up. Again, I said I thought the way this game was gonna be dependent upon controlling emotion, in particular on the Texas side. Because I think Oklahoma is just that powerful. I give Texas a lot of credit in this game. I think I won't even say hung in there. I mean, it wasn't really hanging in there. It was, it was a matter of battling back and forth, and kind of the best players being the best players, and which talent could outdo that. Ellinger, well, really just the ball was in his hands, but it was a lot of dink and dunk. Weren't able to stretch the field. He went 25 of 37 for 205. He took 9 sacks in this game. I mean, the Sooners were all over him. And I give them a lot of credit. They were really able to push the line of scrimmage and keep the game into the short passing plays. Well, Texas still, though, in fairness, ran the ball okay, minus Sam Ellinger. Now, here's the problem is Ellinger also had 23 attempts on the ground. That can't be right. I can't be reading that right. That's got to be a misprint.
No, that's right.
That 23 attempts.
He had more carries than any running back on the team,
and was still minus 9 yards.
So there was. Well, I mean, you said it, 9 sacks. So that'll be
those
true. Sacks
will
be
on the run.
Yeah, those will be counted as a carry. So take 23 minus 9. You've got 14, right? So he had 14 carries, still more than any other running back on the team.
Yeah.
But each of those 9 were negative yards if it was a sack.
Yeah, I think this
he did score twice on the ground.
Yeah, he did. I will say, I think this just, while Jalen Hurts was not otherworldly by any stretch of the imagination,
he wasn't
from a passing perspective.
No, thank you.
Let me finish sentences.
Would you just let me finish?
So, at 16 to 28 for 235, but he did have 3 touchdowns, had 1 pick. But man, on the ground, 17 for 131 and 1 touchdown. That I said it. There is a smoothness to the way he runs. There is a comfortability in the way that he runs in this offense that I never saw anything close to this at Alabama. And it's just a matter of getting the right fit for the right guy. He was unbelievable on the ground, and I think Oklahoma's the real deal. Kennedy Brooks was still good on the ground, 10 carries for 105 yards. They just were able to do so many things. I think a guy that's going to get a lot of looks in the pros is CeeDee Lamb. 10 receptions, 171 yards, 3 scores. This kid's a player. I like him. He knows how to get open. He can catch some contested catches balls in the end zone. Just he can do it all. I give credit to Texas for hanging in this game, but to me, I saw a game where I felt like Oklahoma was much more in control.
Yeah. CeeDee Lamb, something, man. I tell you, he was everything in this game. 3 TDs. Reminds me kind of a Tyreek Hill. He's just that type of guy. He's shifty. He can run it deep. He can beat you deep. He can get it in the short game and make you miss with yards after the catch. Here's my take, and it's very similar. This game was very similar for Texas as the LSU game, and I say that because it's just too little too late, man.
Yep.
It's like, in both games, they were in both games, but then, it seemed like, let me take a quick gander at the score here. Yeah, I mean, they come out of halftime, and that's where they seem to that third quarter gives them fits. Now, granted, they outscored Oklahoma 14-10 in the third quarter. But again, it's just too little too late. They're in the game. 34-27 is the final with Oklahoma winning. They're in, that's a touchdown. They're in the game. And, and one of, it's just too little too late is what I'm saying. They're not able to get themselves a lead and hold on to it or make it back and forth. It's, we score a touchdown. We're down 34-20. We score a touchdown. It's 34-27, that type of thing. And, we're closer now, but then, Oklahoma will come back and answer. And that's what it was in this game. Like Oklahoma, every time Texas came out and put, stifled Oklahoma on offense, got the ball, came down and had a score to close the gap. Oklahoma got the ball back and went down the field and scored.
Yep.
And, we watched the end of this game for the most part while we were moving around in the stadium. And it's like, Texas has closed the gap. And literally it wasn't like 2 minutes later and Oklahoma moved down the field in like 4 plays. And then within like a couple minutes and then put more points on the board. So, that's the part of Texas's game that they need to fix. It might even harken back to last year, too. I mean, they just need to be able to kind of, I don't know if I want to say close the deal or hang on, but they can't have this, like, just too little too late situation where they just have to try to, catch up at the end, and they're running out of time, and time becomes their enemy, and then time eventually kills them.
Yep.
I mean, that's it. Here's the thing I have to say on the Oklahoma side of the ball. Yeah, I mean, look, Hurts is otherworldly. And I know he's a tough SOB, and we've seen him have minor health issues when he was at Alabama, nothing that was season ending, but I'll be damned if they lose Jalen Hurts this year. If they lose him, that could just take them down completely. And I guess I'm going to say that to say is like, I mean, I know he's two-dimensional with his arm and his legs. Even healthy. I mean, you face some good defense and a good defensive coordinator, even if he's not hurt, that's going to give him I just don't. Too much on CeeDee Lamb was great, and he's the only thing that I think kind of saves that commentary. And they were able to run the ball with Kennedy Brooks. He was 10 for $105, no TDs. But it is all Jalen Hurts. And they're putting him in a good position to distribute the ball to the playmakers to make this thing continue to roll. But it is all Jalen Hurts, and it's just, I mean, heaven forbid something were to happen to the kid. And I don't want to jinx him. I would love to see that Alabama-Oklahoma matchup in the first round of the playoffs.
I can't believe you are making such a big deal out of this, knowing that the Rattler is waiting in the wings. You don't think Spencer can run it like this?
He's not even the backup quarterback.
I know. I'm just messing with you.
I kid. You're right. Yeah, I don't. What am I thinking? What am I thinking?
The Rattler.
That guy's got.
No, he is that. I mean, granted, I would say that about a lot of teams. Like, I don't think Clemson's a national title contender, given this field without Lawrence. But as a part of the offense, I get it. Like, Clemson can run the ball, can play defense.
We saw, like, last
at a level
year,
that's
Chase
a little
Bryce
different.
Came in, and he's not great, but he was able to distribute the ball to the playmakers because we got him.
But he is just such the catalyst. I get your point. He is the catalyst for that team, and I got to be honest with you, I love it. What I saw out of that kid last year, in that limited time that he had, I just kind of fell in love with him and the way he plays and his attitude. I loved when they interviewed his dad in the first week of the season, how his dad reacted, which was a very calm, almost kind of like, look, it's all about the team, get away from me, kind of, but in a nice way. It was very, very pleasant, but just had a very good attitude, very down to earth, and I can see that in his son. And I got to be honest with you, I'm rooting for him. I love watching him play. He's fun, but he is the catalyst of that team.
I mean, so now Oklahoma is sitting at 5. They're 6-0. Texas drops down to 15. They're 4-2. They're out of it now.
Yep.
That was their chance. And Oklahoma now, I mean, they were showing the percentage rankings of teams that should be able, the teams that have the best shot based on the rest of the year's schedule to get into the playoff. Obviously, we were number 1 with like some ridiculous 92%. Oklahoma, I think, was 2 at like 66%. I mean, I think it should be more than that. They're scheduled the next few weeks. They've got West Virginia coming to Oklahoma, to Norman. They got to go to Kansas State. They got Iowa State, who, preseason some people thought could be the thorn in folks' side. And they're not bad, but that too is in Norman. And then they will go to Waco to take on Baylor. So, that might be a game for them. Then they get TC at home, and then they got to go take on their cross-state rival in Oklahoma State. So, I mean, you look at that. The only team that, really left on the schedule that could be a troublesome one in my mind is going to Waco to take on Baylor.
Yep.
Otherwise, they cruise right to the Big 12 championship game. I don't know that Texas is going to be there. It could, if Baylor takes one loss, and that's to Oklahoma, then it's going to be Baylor.
Right.
Look, I just think Oklahoma's going to cruise through this thing.
Yep. I feel the same way. I do.
Yep.
I really do.
Let's scoot to the next game. Which one you want it to be? Let's talk LSU. Why don't we do that?
All right.
Go ahead. You begin.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the loser on this one. And I had made a comment in our preview to this game that I felt 2 things that Florida had to do to really have a shot to win this game. I thought they needed to run the ball, run for over 140-plus yards in this game, and they needed to win the turnover battle. I was thinking a +2 on the turnovers. I will tell you, they hit 146 in rushing yards, so they did that part. And then but they did not win the turnover battle. They had a turnover themselves and were not able to force any. And to me, that really was the difference. But I want to say that with this loss, Florida is a extremely legitimate team. Georgia better pay attention because they are by no means, in my mind, definitely going to the title game. This UF team is tough, man. They are scrappy. Their defense came up tough in certain times. And so I really was far more impressed with what they did. I mean, again, we're talking about playing with a backup quarterback. Trask went 23 of 39 for 310, had 3 scores. Again, doing it through the air, which I didn't know they would be able to do. I mean, even you had Emory Jones come in and he threw one little dink pass for a touchdown. He was 1 for 2. But he ran the ball too as well. Pirine, again, they were not explosive in the running game, and that was almost better that they weren't in getting those yards because I think they helped limit the clock a little bit. But, LSU was up by a score. Then I think, were they up 14-0 at one point? Or was it? No, 7-7.
No, 7-7.
Then it was 14-14. Then it was 21. Then it was 21-14. Then it was 21-21. Then Florida took the lead on them. I think Florida was up 28-21. They were up. And then LSU kind of started to get a little bit of run in this game.
They had the lead for one time in the game.
One time. It was 28-21, I believe, is when they had the lead. So this was a game where I thought Florida gave LSU everything they had, and I'll kind of turn it over to you at this point, but I just think LSU proved that they are legit. Very, very legit, because I don't think Florida scored some chump points in this. I think LSU had to win it, and they did.
Yep. I mean, look, Burrow did his thing again. Unbelievably efficient, 21-24. We were listening to this game as well, coming back, and at one point, starting the game, he had not missed a pass. He obviously missed 3. Yeah. 293 yards, just shy of 300, 3 touchdowns, no picks. He actually ran the ball 6 times for 43 yards, and those are more on broken plays because they don't draw up runs for him necessarily. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Mr. Edwards-Helaire had a great game, 13 carries on the ground for 134 yards and 2 TDs. And that's, I think, what I took away big on this is, it's been the Joe Burrow show, though Edwards-Helaire in the running game has been decent. It's been the Joe Burrow show. Mm-hmm. So they were able to show some balance, with, even though Burrow had, if you take away his 6 carries, which I think for the most part were scrambles. Again, I was listening to the game. They had 27 carries and 24 passes. So they were very balanced in this game. It wasn't all Joe Burrow. The defense had come out for LSU with some injuries on it, got some people back. But the same thing for Florida. The Zuniga kid was back in this game, and then I think at the end he got banged up and went back out. It was an ankle that had held him out, and I think that's what he re-aggravated. But, I think Florida is a much better team than we gave them credit for most of the season. Mm-hmm. And this, in my mind, was a 35-28 game. That last touchdown scored, it was deserving, but it was at the end, and they had control. I think that I still have a little question in the fact that this the vaunted LSU defense that it is, and I know Florida's able to put up some points, but they put 28 on them. But there's been other teams that we talked about it, Purdue or Vanderbilt put 38. I mean, that still is a question to me. But I think what was more the overlying positive for LSU was that they were able to get it done balanced both on the ground and through the air. And again, that means you're gonna have to pick your poison when you play this team. And I'm sure most teams are gonna go into it saying shut the passing game and Joe Burrow down. And if they can get it going on the ground like they did with Edwards-Helaire, that's going to cause problems for teams. Yep. The defense, I guess, is the biggest question mark, but. Again, we talked about the Alabama game. I mean, Alabama has let some points on the board as well, and they let A&M put 28 on them. So, it's they're good, man, and it's the clash against Alabama here in a few weeks is going to be just another one for the ages with those two teams.
I'm guessing it's not going to be 6-3.
Probably not, but it's to Alabama's advantage, it's in Tuscaloosa. Yep. You're talking 3 weeks from now. Alabama gets 3. They're bitching about their schedule. They get to have, and not that it's a great team, but they're home the next 3 weeks. Alabama gets Tennessee at home. Alabama gets Arkansas at home, and then they get LSU at home. So. Some good tune-up games for Alabama going into LSU because those teams shouldn't give them any problems. Whereas LSU, they have to go on the road next week to Miss State, and then they have to play Auburn at home, and then they have to go on the road to Alabama. So
a little tougher lead up.
Little tougher lead up, and we'll see if that if there's anything that comes of that between now and then. But LSU definitely has a shot against Alabama. If I were to look at it right now, I was going to tell you, I think Alabama's going to beat them. I'm going to tell you that people are probably like, look, man, I don't give a damn what you say. Okay, if anybody knows Alabama nowadays, especially outside of the conference, this is my Clemson Tigers. And it's Alabama, and I like what's going on in LSU. I give a ton of credit to their offensive coordinator for what he's done to that offense because it has changed the game for that team. We talked about LSU. That's a defensive team year after year after year, and now it's an offensive-minded team. And quite frankly, they're mirroring what Alabama's done.
Yeah, passing the ball a lot.
And they need, I guess, hey, credit to them. They figure if we're going to have a shot at them, we gotta try to mimic them a little bit better than we have, and not try to do it the way we think we can do it. So, but I still think Alabama is the team to beat. I know they're ranked that way. A lot of people are looking at it and thinking no. Now, LSU with that win this weekend moves them up to number 2 and bounces my Tigers out of the 2 slot to number 3.
And like you said, I don't really care about much of that stuff right now. What matters is when those votes come out for this. But I do want to add one last little piece. LSU, think about how well the defense have played for Florida to keep them in all these games. 1 tackle for loss, 0 sacks on that Florida defense in this game. LSU kept about as clean as you can get. That's pretty impressive.
And that's a good Florida defense. They're very fast, and they got players everywhere. They might not be like I said about Auburn. Auburn's, I still think, has the best D line in college football. But I said it after that game last week when we were talking about Florida Auburn. It was the fact that they may not have that D line, but they got good players on that D line and on that front. They just have good players all over the defensive side of the ball. So that's kind of what's made them so good. All right, final game. That was our matchup. We traveled up to Clemson to watch your Florida State Seminoles come into the Valley, take on my Tigers. Talk about your experience, sir.
The weather was really nice.
It was awesome, dude. It was awesome.
It was. The game was the game was the game. But the experience up there, I've been up to Clemson a few times. Great fans. We had a great time. I said it beforehand. The bye week came at the wrong time for us, and Clemson's bye week came at the perfect time after a tough game against North Carolina. And Clemson showed every bit of the reason why they belong up at the top. They were fantastic. Florida State. I guess really my only thoughts when it comes to the game in Florida State is I need to see Taggart say something he's going to do that's tangible and actually do it. I cannot keep living with this. We're going to be better. We're going to, we're not going to quit. We're a year and a half into this experiment. We shouldn't be measuring things by whether we quit or not. The simple fact is Clemson absolutely fisted us. It's the nicest way I can say it. It was brutal. It was probably one of the most embarrassing losses I've seen in a long time. They're just not – Florida State's not competitive. Their defense, it was 21-0, into the beginning of at the end of the first quarter or the beginning of the second quarter?
Beginning of the second.
So it just again, we don't have the horses, we don't have the players, but I guess I'm tired of measuring things by whether we quit or not. This isn't like, junior high football. This is, big time college football, and we're not big time. The defense was poor. The offense was I don't even know. Do we even have an offense? I don't even know what to call it.
I'm not a guy that's on board with, hey, we're going to do the 2 quarterback thing. I'm just not. And Blackman did get more of the run. I didn't like it. It was at bad times that they brought Hornibrook in. Blackman went out, and they were switching on and off. It wasn't like it was balanced. It was only like 1 series for this guy and the next for this guy, or 2 and 2. It was messed up, man.
Well, in Hornibrook's, I don't want to call it defense because I got no defense for this team, but he came in and was already 21-0. Blew it, missed a wide open receiver that probably would have scored, and instead threw it 4 yards behind the receiver right to your D-back and got it. Blackman was awful in this game. Cam Akers, there was nothing he could do. The offensive line was terrible.
Well, and that's who you got, and that's what I said.
Yeah.
Our run D was what was worrying me, and in my mind, the way you've been feeding Akers almost 30 times a game, that's the guy to go to. And obviously, Venables, our D coordinator, knew it because we Akers carried the ball only 9 times. That's way, way below what the average is for him. And it was only for 34 yards. Didn't see the end zone. We shut him down. So there was obviously a focus on bringing it to stop the run and putting pressure on the quarterback while we're doing it.
Yeah, look, Florida State was an absolute embarrassment. I don't know any other way to say it. I'm not going to sit here and try to sugarcoat it. Clemson abused a a team that they are extremely superior to, man for man, all the way around. It was just, I mean, we have one really good receiver, Tamarion Terry. He made a very good play on a poorly thrown ball, ran back the other way, scored a big touchdown. That was it, and then a garbage touchdown at the end. I mean, that was our game. Other than that, everything was terrible. And Clemson and I give Clemson credit. They made us pay for it. They took the game to us and punched us in the face right off the bat and didn't stop punching us. I think they might have even scored a touchdown even after the game was over.
Yeah, well, we have 4 quarterbacks in this game. Trevor came out of the game, middle of the third. Our man Chase Bryce went in. He did all right. And then we had Foma-chan come in. He did okay just for a few plays. We even had our running back Travis Etienne throw the ball for a 23-yarder. Nice.
Yay.
Trevor was 17 of 25 for $170, 3 TDs and 1 pick. I want to make sure everyone knows that didn't watch this game. Todd McShay was on the sideline. I thought it was him. And so he saw it, so he'll speak the truth. The one pick that Trevor threw, it was stupid. He should have thrown it away. You thought he was throwing it away. I think he was trying to make a play. We were up in that game, and it was right before, I think, half, and he's rolling out to the sidelines. The sidelines getting closer and closer. He's trying to get someone open. It could either just tossed it away, but decided to try to throw it deep downfield. I think it was the Dion came and it got picked off, right? And it was a good pick. I mean, the guy he toe tapped the sidelines to get it, but it wasn't a pick where he was fooled. I want to say, like, where somebody fooled him.
He forced the ball. He shouldn't have forced.
But
you can do that when you're up 28-0
correct.
or whatever.
That's the other thing. It wasn't, like, critical and that it screwed us. It was, in his mind, we were comfortable.
He was going for the jugular is what he was really doing.
Yeah, our receivers, I'm looking across the board. Modest day. No one cleared 100, but I did see Justin Ross, who was 5 for 61 and 2 TDs, get back into his groove, especially with Trevor. I haven't seen him. It seemed not right with the Ocho up until this game, and you guys allowed him to get back into his groove. Our running game, Travis got back on the horse there. He didn't score any, but he did have 17 carries for 127 yards. Looked good doing it. Just all across the board, it was pretty good. I do want to say, and I'm not trying to be mean, but I said it when we were walking out of the stadium, when you guys scored your first touchdown, that, look, this game was a shutout, okay? It was a shutout. That touchdown, we started to sprint, and this is how we do. Middle of the third quarter, we start to bring in some backups to play with some of our starters, okay? And then at the end of the third quarter, there were no starters. It was all backups, and you guys were still running your first team on both sides of the ball. And both times you scored, the first one especially was maybe your second, third string guys, but the next score was like third, fourth string and walk-ons that you scored. So I say all that to say, if we dropped in the polls from 2 to 3, I think LSU is definitely deserving. I think they could be deserving of a number 1 ranking because of how they've looked, who they've played, and so forth. But if we had not taken our first team out there and we blanked you 45-0, are we going to slide from 2 to 3? I don't think so. Alabama didn't slide out of 1, and they let A&M put 28 points on them. A&M put 24 on it. Look, man. Or they put 10 on us. A&M put 10 on us. So, if we blank you and don't take out our team, are we going to slide then with a 45-0 win?
Well, to be honest with you, we probably owe you in this one. I think your drop is more a product of we are deemed such a horrible opponent. Not anything a knock on Clemson. It's just that, Alabama beat a ranked team, regardless of whether they should be or not. That's the way they look at it. They beat a ranked team, and LSU, won a game against UF that was wildly. I think, like, the national perception of us is so bad, and I'm not saying they're wrong. It's just so bad. That maybe people that don't watch the game and realize how much you manhandled us in this game and how it was not 45-14. It would have been 75-0 had you played your starters. I think that to me, to be honest with you, is it. Key is win out. You'll be in it. You guys are a good enough team. And a lot of these teams are going to have to play other people, and they're going to lose.
Yeah, I mean, go down and look at the stat line for us rushing and receiving, including Trevor. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys that touch the ball on the ground. Receiving wise, Jesus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 guys that touch the ball. So Justin Ross, Amari Rodgers, T. Higgins didn't trot out there every snap, even from the beginning. You saw Overton come in. You saw T.J. Chase come in. You saw Powell come in. You saw Ngata come in. I mean, with some of those guys, sometimes a full change in our receiver set with Ngata, with Cornell Powell in the slot, and with Ladson. Ngata and Ladson are both true freshmen. So we do that constantly, rolling guys in, even though we have those studs.
Yeah.
We'll do it winning or losing. And so I don't know. I mean, it looked good. We were getting back to form. I'm ready. I was excited because we came out and did what we've done the past couple of years after playing and actually winning, and some of those we lost in a tight game, and then getting the bye week, and then getting ourselves right and hitting that next phase. And that's what we did. So we'll travel to Louisville to take on a much better Cardinal team than we've seen in the past year or so. But we've got everything in front of us right now. I hope you guys can find a way to beat Florida at the end of the year. That would be so tremendous. That would just solidify everything. But 45-14, my Tigers roll 6-0, number 3 in the country. Everything will work itself out. I'm not worried about that with Alabama and LSU 1 and 2. Not going to stay that way. Just won't. Can't. It can't. So I'm not worried about it. We just need to keep doing what we do, and we'll be fine at the end of the year. So that will wrap up the recap of Week 7's college football. We'll get this out and up as quick as we can. We thank you all once again for listening. Enjoy, and we'll have more great stuff for you this week for everything that happens on the gridiron. Have a great day.